Welcome to the channel and welcome to another gorgeous episode of the Dutch Pagans channel. And today I want to talk about something that's rarely talked about in paganism. I hear people talking about the gods, people talking about the spirits, people talking about the ancestors. There's very few people talking about auguries. Now, another reason why I want to make this video is because I was told that when Christianity first came to prominence and took power in ancient Rome, the first thing that they outlawed, absolute first thing, were auguries. So that could be an indication that the earliest Christians were very afraid of auguries and that there's some power in there that we can rediscover together in this video. But just pause and rewind it back, because first I have to tell you what an actual augury is. I think we all know the English word suspicious. No, and there's just something not right and you fear that it's a bad omen. Well, augury actually comes from the opposite of suspicious, meaning auspicious. So you're looking for good signs. Now, how this was done in the ancient world, this was done in ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And nobody actually knows how old this technique is. It's been written down in ancient Rome and ancient Greece. So let's say 2000 to 2500 years ago, but even those writings, they tell us that it is at least 1000 years old. So this was widely practiced for a very long time. So what exactly is it? Well, in this case, it was looking at birds. There was somebody with a somewhat holy function who did a form of divination while looking at the sky behind me. They looked how the birds, how they flew, how many they were, and then they could see those as signs, translate that, and they could see if certain things had the blessing of the gods. Now, this wasn't just limited to birds. You had a form of augury called pyromancy, where people made a big fire and then they looked at how the fire behaved, personality of the fire, where the smoke went, and according to that, they could tell you the future. They can tell you if the winds are blowing in your favor or not. You also had a form called aeromancy, which means they looked at the sky behind me, the beautiful Dutch sky, the clouds, how they moved, the wind, how it's moving, and they did divination. And if you had the wind in your back or the wind in your face, they could tell you that, not literally, of course, because we can all tell it literally, but figuratively. They could foretell your future. So I want to talk about how you can spot an augury. Because animals, and especially birds, they are still seen as like omens and signs, but they're seen by people in like the new age scene. Those people who, a lot of them see every animal and every bird as a personal message from the divine, and I think it's gotten like a little bit of a bad rap because of that. Because no, Karen, not every bird that shows up at your doorstep is a special sign from the heavens. Some of them might be. So this video is here to help you differentiate when is something an augury and when not. Now, in ancient times, they were more in tune with nature, so they knew what birds were normally where and what is considered normal. And when something deviated from the normal, they saw that as a sign. Now, many of us don't have our own little piece of nature that where we live that we can just observe the whole time, but we can still distill signs and auguries from the natural world. I think a big rule in my life is when an animal shows up at a very peculiar and strange time, or a very, just not a strange time, but it's a strange place for the animal. Whenever an animal shows up in a way and you go, that's odd, you might be dealing with an augury. I've been interested in this for a long time. So I've been like collecting data and seeing like what animals show up when. I could show you one instance where I was on holiday in Denmark and I had some friends a couple of weeks before that. They said, yeah, we might come over when you're in Denmark. But we hadn't had any contact for weeks. So we were in Denmark. We were just first setting up, just coming home, setting up the house, putting the kids to bed. And I was just taking a walk after the kids went to sleep. And I just walked through that part of Denmark. And I'd never been there before. And suddenly there were two deer crossing my path, like 5 meters from me, very close. And they looked at me and then they went. And I know from experience that a deer is a symbol for friendship, connection. So when I saw those two deers, I just sent them a text message out of the blue. I said, greetings from Denmark. I just talked it over with a deer. And the deer said that you're coming. Got a text back. Say, yeah, you're exactly right. We're on our way right now. We'll be there tomorrow. Auguries can tell you what's going on. I could tell you many examples, but also the reason I'm making this video is I recently had an augury that quite possibly can and will change my life, and I will talk about that in the future. But then I can reference this video for people who don't know what an actual augury is. Look for animals showing up at weird places and weird times. The timing could also be weird. You could lose your job in a terrible way. People just rug pull you, just like the ground is slain under your feet. You're totally desperate. You walk outside, you go, what the fuck am I gonna do? And then you look up, and there's a stork literally flying circles around your head. That's an augury. So if you have any examples of animals showing up in your life at peculiar times, feel free to let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to reply to help you understand what's going on. Not that I'm the central authority when it comes to divination on auguries, but I'll do my best to understand. These videos here just to also just tell you, open up, recognize when something is going on and something is weird, and take notice of it. And if you don't know the meaning of an animal, you can just very quickly think what that animal represents. Like an animal that shows up for me a lot is the buzzard. So that's kind of like the European, the Dutch version of the American eagle. So that's like the bird that flies the highest and comes down. So he's the messenger of higher consciousness. So usually when I see him, it's a good message. It's a good sign. I actually was in a car once with this is like my girlfriend isn't like 200% down with auguries, but this changed her mind. I was once in the car with her and we were driving and I saw just a buzzard. And then I saw another buzzard. And then I saw another buzzard. And then we were looking and there keep more and more buzzards. But we just saw that there were buzzards flying. But if you look closely, there were more buzzards behind the buzzards, and behind the buzzards were even more buzzards. So I was driving down a long road and we were both looking and we were like, I've never seen that many buzzards in my freaking life. This is like, and she looked at me and she says, you told me that has a meaning, right? What's the meaning behind this? Because this is all very odd. So I looked at her. I said, I don't really, I'm not completely sure at this time. I haven't figured it out completely, but I know this. It's a good message. And after I said it, my phone rang. And there was somebody on the other side of the line, and they were offering me a job as kind of like a youth counselor to work with children with troubled childhoods and ADHD and all that stuff. So I had that conversation while we were in the car. Both us being in complete amazement, like what was that? And then I hung up the phone. Yeah, okay, I'll just closed everything off, and I said yes, I'll come to your office and we'll talk it over, and I'll work with these kids and I'll do my best. After that conversation was gone, we looked at each other. It's like, wow, this is a really big coincidence. And then we looked at the sky. All the buzzards gone, totally gone. And then we were looking at, okay, this is even weirder now. So that's what got my girlfriend on board with the augury train. If so, once again, if you have any auguries or crazy stuff that happened to you, animals that shows up at peculiar times in your life, let me know. It is the old law that I was once taught by a Native American. Archie Fire Reindeer was his name. That the Native Americans believed, and it's important to look at that because they have still more of this culture intact than we have. They are the keepers of that knowledge. All of nature, everything is exactly where it needs to be at all time. Only man, only man can deviate from this past. Only man can be what Christians would call sinful, can deviate from the path. But nature, everything is exactly where it needs to be as a perfect representation. Everything is found in everything. And auguries tell us that. Once again, tell me your auguries. I'm talking about auguries, and I don't know if you can see it, but there are some geese over there. You can't see it. You probably can't see it because it's too far. There are some geese with some young ones. Came to say hi. I don't know what that augury is. It could be one. A goose, by the way, is the one that flies. It flies, um, from one part of the planet to the other. So it's a symbol for travel. It's a symbol for astral travel, and it's a symbol for transcendence. It's a symbol of transcending what you've been given in this life. Now, that's all I got. Ga met de goden. And I'll see you next week. Go with the gods.